As human beings, we are utterly dependent on our planet for survival. Without the oxygen produced by plant life, we couldn't survive. Without the water and the food the Earth provides, we couldn't survive. Without the ozone layer, we would be scorched by the sun. We are part of a system God has created that keeps us alive. God could have created us in a way that made us truly independent, depending on nothing outside of ourselves for our own survival. But that's not what God chose to do. Rather, God created us with physical bodies that are in need of care and upkeep, and He gave us all the resources we need. In the book of Genesis, God identifies human beings as the stewards of the earth. A steward is essentially a caretaker. In ancient kingdoms, whenever the king or queen was away, it was the responsibility of the steward or the caretaker to care for the kingdom, to make sure that everything was running smoothly in the king or queen's realm. As stewards of the earth, it is our responsibility to make sure our earth is cared for, to make sure that we use the resources well, and that those resources will be available for future generations. In the past decades, we've released countless amounts of harmful pollutants. We've created landfills as large as cities, and we've used our resources in a way that isn't sustainable, a way that has driven some species into near extinction. Of course, hindsight is 2020. When many of these projects began, they were seen as ways of providing mass amounts of energy and food. They didn't know how harmful these actions might be for our planet. And sometimes actions that may seem good at the time may have unintended consequences. We now know the damage these actions have caused and will continue to cause unless we make some changes. The effects of climate change have displaced entire communities, and the areas that have been most affected by climate change also happen to be the areas that aren't really responsible for climate change. They are victims of wealthy nations that are contributing pollution to our world and refusing to take responsibility for what they have done to damage our planet. Just for one example, climate change has caused the Lake Chad Basin in Nigeria to deplete. In the 1960s, the lake had an area of 26,000 square kilometers. Since then, it has depleted to less than 1,500 square kilometers. The people who live by the lake depend on the lake for their livelihood. It is their source of food. Now that it's all but gone, those communities have needed to relocate. And because resources are so scarce, it has caused violent competition within the local people just to have the resources they need to survive. So why don't countries like ours make changes? Why don't we adopt renewable sources of energy that will replace the damaging fossil fuels? Well, it mostly comes down to money. The fossil fuel industry makes billions of dollars every year, so of course they have no interest in giving up that wealth for the common good. In 2015, Pope Francis released an encyclical called Laudato Si, or On Care for Our Common Home. In the encyclical, he says, "We are faced not with two separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather with one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental." Climate change already has drastic consequences for real people, and unless we start taking our roles as the Earth's stewards seriously, those consequences will continue to grow more and more dire. Our parish is a Franciscan parish, which means it embodies the spirituality of St. Francis of Assisi, striving to follow Jesus Christ in a way that honors the earth and all its inhabitants. The road to repairing the damage we have done will be long and difficult, But as I always say, anything worth doing is difficult. Now please read the material below and answer the reflection questions. Have a great week and happy Thanksgiving.